Hello, Pod Smashers of the Internet, and welcome to another episode of
80-bit Pod Smash.
Where gaming goes to grab a beer. Ooh, nice ting.
Thanks.
We are your hosts.
Penguin and Termite. I am Penguin.
I am Termite, and we are a weekly video game podcast smashing together ideas that you care about with video games.
That's right, and tonight we are going to be answering the age-old question since the dawn of time, which is better for developers to focus on creating new IPs and telling new stories, or focusing on their existing franchises. And we're going to be kind of talking about a bunch of different aspects of that kind of dichotomy there. And yeah, it's a topic that I'm really passionate about. I've been very passionate about it for a long time as we began to see Hollywood descend into unoriginality. And it's a conversation that very much applies to video games as well. So we'll dive into more of that as we get closer to our main topic. But we are where gaming goes to grab a beer. So we like to start the show by talking about what beers we're drinking, or drinks, alcoholic beverages in general, that we are drinking. So take it away, Termite. What are you drinking tonight?
I actually do have a beer, and this is one of the rewards for helping procure a PlayStation 5 for a friend of the show, Sean. He gifted me some beers for my time and my effort, always from Aslan up in Northern Virginia. This one's from Herndon. It's a special release called Le Fleurs, and it is a imperial stout conditioned on peanut butter, pretzels, cocoa nibs, and caramel. And I'm about to taste it. And it's thick.
Thick with 2 C's.
Oh my gosh. That is dessert with a hint of stout. It is amazing. Everything that this thing has in it, you can taste. So you get the pretzels, the caramel's really strong, the cacao nibs, or cocoa nibs, whatever you want to call them, chocolate. Yes. This is so good. Really, really sweet, though. So if you're not into sweet beers, it's a 10%. So it has a boozy back kick to it as well, but not like a barley wine would. So it's not that powerful. And it has a very, very silky smooth texture without it being a milk stout. I'm surprised, but it's very, very smooth. So
nice.
There you go.
Very good. Yeah, I am working my way through my last special... You're into it. Do you need a moment? Do you need to pause the podcast? Do you need to go take the drink into the back room there and
get a cigarette?
Yeah, exactly. Oh man. So I'm working my way through my last run to Total Wine, where I tried to grab some more interesting beers than my normal fare, since I had been up there and took the opportunity to do so. So my latest beer from around the world that I am drinking comes back from my hometown in Harrisonburg, Virginia. So not too far around the world. But I saw this beer and I couldn't resist because I'm a big fan of this brewery from back home. So Brothers Craft Brewing in Harrisonburg, Virginia has a English porter called Elementary. And it doesn't really have anything fun in the bottle, so I can't really read anything, but that's okay. It's good. I know that we had a discussion previously about the difference between porters and stouts, and it was kind of one of those things where it's like all stouts are porters technically, but not all porters are stouts. Yep. And this tastes more like a stout on the front end. It's creamier, it's thicker than I would expect a porter to be. I kind of think of porters as being a little bit more like an ale, like have the feel and look of an ale, but this is very creamy and thick like a stout is. Where I get the porter is on the back end, but quite frankly, it reminds me very much of like a Guinness in flavor and everything.
Oh, okay.
It tastes like the taste reminds me very much of Guinness, where it kind of does taste like an ale or a lager or something on the back end, but on the front end you get a lot of that kind of like malty and a little bit of sweet. But you said yours kind of tastes like pretzels, and that was like a good app.
Oh yes,
like
that
for mine,
tiny hint of
a
salt.
little bit of salt. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, Brothers Elementary. It's very good. I never have it before. Brothers makes a lot of stuff that I like back home, so they're probably my favorite brewery from my hometown. So, yep.
They used to be 2 brothers or 3 brothers?
3 brothers, yeah. So I actually have a glass from when they were still 3 brothers. So I have a 3 brothers glass, and then, but they've rebranded to Brothers Brewing a few years back. So, but they have a really good stout. I actually want you to come, I want to take a road trip with you to Harrisonburg someday.
Yes.
Take you around my old haunts, because they got some pretty cool breweries down there. But I would love to go with you to Brothers, but we have to go around like Christmas time, because they have a stout there called Resolute, and it is très magnifique. It's so good, but it's one of their like seasonal releases. They only do it around I think it started in November, and it's always fantastic. So
sounds amazing. I'm in.
Awesome. All right, so those are our beers. Is there anything that you wanted to talk about today?
Speaking of getting together at all, Where are we at with the Fauci ouchies?
I'm still I've got nothing. Nothing to share for it. No tech. In fact, I don't even know if they've been texting me recently. You know how they like would bother you every week and be like, don't worry, you're still pre-registered. I don't even think I got that. I used to get that over the weekends. I don't think I even got that text this weekend. So,
I was thinking about that too.
So no news on that front. You know, I hear about how you can like. I even registered for a site that was like, we've got, you know, they've got the like extras in case people cancel because they have to like open them 6 hours in advance. So if people cancel at the last minute, they still need something to do. Like they that's like a perfectly good vaccine that could go to waste.
Yep.
So I even signed up for that, and like my brother-in-law got his first shot that way, and I haven't even gotten that yet. So I'm like,
man,
yeah, right. So, but yeah, no news on that front.
So many people have them that I know. It's like constantly every day there's someone like, I got my vaccine, I got my shot.
It's
like,
good. They're ramping it up. Like Macy checks
Yeah.
the numbers every day, and you know, like, and there's like percentages, and you know, our state has almost 30% have at least had one shot, and that's great. Like, so the machine is now whirring, and I believe with the Johnson & Johnson vaccine being approved, that's 3 vaccines now that you could possibly get. So I feel like that's going to speed things up, and there's one more that's about to be approved as well.
The AstraZeneca or AstraZeneca?
That's it, AstraZeneca, yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, that's 4 potential vaccines that, you know, that you could get, and that'll just speed the process up. But, you know, we're still sitting here waiting, you know what I mean? Like, I'm like, I just, in my mind, I'm like, I'm just not expecting it until, like, June. And if I expect it in June and get it earlier, then yay. But, you know.
I do believe that all of Virginia is supposed to open up for vaccinations by May 1st.
Right. So we only have to wait like one more
April.
month. Yes. Yep.
So I think June is a very, very real, like, you're going to get it before June.
I hope so. That's what I'm saying. I hope so, because then on my birthday I could have some fun.
Yes. And audience might wonder, why the crap do you guys care about us getting our vaccines? Because as soon as we do, we're back in person again, baby. We're going to be tinking, and it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, and you know me, I'm like, I've gotten so used to doing this remotely that I'm going to complain about it probably when we do finally get a chance. Like, I have to drive all the way to his house. Or like with the editing, because we've talked about how the editing creates 2 separate tracks, so I can like mute one track if I need to, but I can't really do that in person, so it's fine. Will totally be fine. But I'm definitely like, there's going to be inconveniences for me. Who knows? We may still occasionally do. I mean, Zencastr is an awesome product, so we may still occasionally use it. Hear that, Zencastr? You want to? I know you're listening right now. You want to sponsor us?
That'd be great. I would love some Zencastr sponsor money.
Oh yeah. But yeah, so that's this is really exciting, and we're going to be able to do more things too. Like we want to be able to go, do more partnerships with Reclaim Arcade, and just kind of get ourselves out there more, especially because people are going to want to be out come summer. People are going to want to be doing stuff and doing fun stuff. So we're hoping to tap into that energy and get some stuff done.
Mm-hmm. Cool,
but no promises yet.
No promises yet. I mean, it looks like
it
looks like there's no pandemic out there. Just driving around,
right.
Bebopping around town or whatever. There's tons of people out. Traffic is nightmare. It's like back to pre-pandemic times. Probably worse because people aren't riding together.
Right.
So it's probably just more cars. But yeah, it seems like there's no pandemic other than the signs posted and like some people wearing masks around.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as crowds gathering, there's live bands. There's people congregating around. There's definitely crowds happening. So
yeah, it's the slow return to normal for sure.
Yep.
Or whatever new normal is. There will totally be lasting impacts. In fact, I hope there are lasting impacts.
Yeah.
I think it'll be more common to see people with masks and stuff like that. I hope so, at least.
Especially on flu season. Like,
exactly.
Let's go.
Right. Yeah. But I think we're starting to see things return to a way they were before a year ago. So that's good. I think that's good. I think we're all ready for it. And again, I think in some cases we're a little too ready. People are a little bit too ready to get back out there. And in some
Chomping
others,
at the bit.
I don't really know what those numbers look like. I don't really know what the infection numbers look like in our state. But I know in some states they're having spikes because people are getting out a little bit too early and restrictions are being released a little bit too early. So we're not out of the woods yet, but it's nice to be able to kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel for sure. So
with that. And normally this would go into our news segment, but I'm going to talk about it here.
Sure.
Today, Comic-Con announced that they're having their convention in person the weekend of November 26th through the 28th. Do you know what weekend that is?
No.
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving, right. Yeah.
Thanksgiving weekend. They're having Comic-Con on Thanksgiving. You know what that means? Everyone who wants to do a booth or shows up from a corporate entity has to get people there early to set up. and will completely destroy any Thanksgiving plans in the 1 year after we stopped all of Thanksgiving last year.
Yeah.
So like this is the return to like, okay, this Thanksgiving is our normal pandemic breakout Thanksgiving. No, we have to go to San Diego to set up for Comic-Con.
So are they rightly getting flack for that?
There's stuff on Twitter, like people are murmuring about it. It's how I found out about it, but I don't know if there's actual feedback yet because it was just announced today. But I'm like, come on, like that who made that decision? Yeah. Seriously?
And you know that people aren't going to be able to just be like, well, you know, and they would say like, oh, any of our employees are welcome to stay at home with their families instead, but the really dedicated ones, and the implication there being, of course, that like, oh, you're not really dedicated enough. Your job's on the line. Right? It's Comic-Con. Are you kidding me? Yeah, that's pretty dumb.
Scummy.
So I don't know who is Comic-Con its own entity. Like, are they their own thing, or are they like an organization that is like organized by like Marvel and DC and all? You know what I mean? Like,
I do believe that they're their own thing.
They're their own thing. Okay, well then, that kind of sucks. And all of their employees. I mean, they're whatever. Their organization. All of their employees are definitely going to have to not work on Thanksgiving. So, oh well, we can't change people. We can't go into their mind palaces, cognitive palaces, Termite, and steal their treasures and change their hearts.
I wish we could.
We'd be some pretty good Phantom Thieves, by the way. We would be. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's funny because we're both playing right now. Well, we're both playing different Persona 5s, but we're still playing Persona 5 together.
Yeah. And my calling card art would not be up to snuff. So.
We'd have to bring someone in for the we would have a whole team. Like, there's our DLC for the night. Who's our Phantom Thieves team from guests on the podcast? Actually, we're doing that.
That's a great DLC.
We're gonna just go right into that because it just works out. So we'll circle back around to favorite things, but I really want to jump into this DLC right now. So
let's do it.
DLC. DLC stands for downloadable content. Yeah, that's what it stands for. And it's a segment of our show where we get to have a little fun conversation, usually about games that we wouldn't normally have about games, but because we just stumbled across that absolutely wonderful DLC, we're going to make it a little bit more meta about our podcast. And so, let's think back on our guests that we've had on the show, and they are now our Phantom Thieves team.
Okay.
So first we'll talk about Penguin and Termite, because obviously we are Penguin and Termite in the cognitive realm. So what do we look like? What are we wearing? What's our style?
Oh, I'm going to look very, very close to what Joker looks like. I'm going to have like a dope vest, collared shirt, tie, and like a long coat, and it's going to look amazing.
You need something.
It won't be black though.
Termite-y,
it will be like, well, maybe the logo of me wearing orange. But I can't really rock orange. I don't have the right,
your mask,
to rock bright colors.
At the very least, your mask needs to have like antennae. Like antennae coming out of the top.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. You just need like a little hint, because whenever they come up with their names, it's almost always based off of their look, right? Skull is called Skull because he's got a skull as his mask. Panther looks like she's dressed like a panther, or she's dressed like a cat, so they call her Panther. So you need like a little hint, so maybe like a little antennae coming out of your top. But I can see it like a brown coat instead of black, like Joker's.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm into it.
And more like whites maybe, and brown complements well with blue, so like dark blues and like a white collared shirt. So I look professional and dope and fly, but very much very, very similar to Joker's look would be how I'd want to be.
What weapon would you use?
That is a good question. Probably a katana, because if we get to pick like what we like, I'm a huge fan of katana.
I'm thinking like my immediate thought, because again, going with the Termite theme, would be like big scissors, like almost like shears, like you use to clip your bushes, but like weaponized, like a weapon version of it.
Could I have them separate so they're like they would come together?
Yeah, they could come together.
Scissors,
oh yeah,
like
totally. Yeah, no, that's even yes. Oh yeah, that'd be awesome.
So then it's like dual.
Then you could dual wield, but then you could also bring them together, like slicing.
Which I was always a huge fan of Zidane from Final Fantasy IX. Yeah. He had that. He either had the Darth Maul double-bladed staff, or he had the two daggers. And I was always a big fan of the daggers.
Yeah,
I like getting in there quick, doing a bunch of damage like a glass cannon, and then getting out.
So what Penguin look like? I mean, I'm guessing that I've got... Well, so I already have my persona of Penguin Man.
Right.
My alter ego, I should say. But, we'll assume that we'll make Penguin Man a little bit more stylish. So definitely a tuxedo. Like the base look is like a tuxedo with some flair on it.
Then we already are very, very similar.
Well, that's why I gave you brown. That's why I gave you a nice brown trench coat in my mind instead of mine, which is more like a tuxedo. And then like a very point, almost like a plague doctor. The plague doctor mask where it comes out and like it's like the very long beak That's what mask. That's what my mask would look
from
like.
Dark Crystal.
Yeah,
the Skeksis.
Yeah. But a little bit more like a masquerade, mask kind of thing. And then I guess my weapon. I don't know what my weapon would be. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. That would.
What do you normally like? What are your weapons?
I like swords. I do like swords, but that's so #basic.
Well,
maybe
turned my swords into shears.
Maybe if it's like a big great sword, like a big old, like huge towering great sword. We haven't really seen
like
anybody
disproportionate, kind of like a Buster sword.
Yep,
so
exactly.
You shouldn't be able to lift it, but you're swinging it around like fast.
And I like hold it in front of me, like with a flat end out, like very stately and knight-like, just because that would work with the tuxedo look. I'm into it. All right, cool. So let's pick a few of our previous guests from the show who would be good Phantom Thieves. I'll say my immediate one that comes to mind, because I think that she would be a good fit for Phantom Thieves, would be our friend Kristen, who was our first guest, actually. So shout out, Kristen. I don't know if you ever listened to this, but you are now dubbed an honorary member of our little Phantom Thieves group. And I'm not quite sure. I'm thinking like maybe she would be kind of, because she's a big Zelda fan. So maybe, riffing off of something like that, she would be like an almost elfish, like give her like kind of an elf style.
And she's a Ravenclaw type, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So she has to have intellect and like wit, that kind of. So where we would be like more physical in your face, she would be maybe a mage, maybe a sorcerer.
That's what I was thinking. Kind of like what Morgana's like in kind of. He's got the sword, but he's they keep talking about how he's like a wizard. At least in Strikers they talk about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, totally. Like maybe going off that Ravenclaw idea, maybe she could be like a. Have like sort of a black raven-y look, like kind of a not a dress, but like a wizard's, almost like a wizard's robe, but like with black raven feathers all down it. That'd be pretty cool.
Looks like a Ghost of Tsushima Ronin.
Yeah,
that's what I'm thinking of.
kind of, yeah. A little bit more stylish, like in the way that those characters
I would hope so. She makes her own clothes, so style is going to be like right up her alley.
And I'm thinking she'd have like a staff, like with a bird's beak on it as her weapon. And
now you just turned her into Aerith.
Kind of. And I guess Raven would be her, if with that look, the go-to would be Raven there for her code name.
There you go.
Cool, awesome. All right, do you want to pick another guest then? And
we have a bunch to choose from. We got Kevin, we got Ryan, we got A-Ray, we have David from the store, like Game Over Games in Texas.
Yep.
Who else have we interviewed?
Tim from Reclaim.
Yeah,
My go-to. Oh no, it's your pick.
It's my pick.
It's your pick. Sorry.
I feel like we gotta grab Ryan. He's got to be in that. He's right. This is like his thing. Like the Phantom Thieves, being able to go change people's hearts, and bring justice, and like
we had him in our boss episode though. But I mean, I don't mind double dipping here. I don't mind double dipping as long as I can say what my fifth pick would be for it to round out our team of 5.
Yeah.
All right, Ryan then. So Ryan's also a Phantom Thief. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's also super fabulous in his style, so he would look dope. And we would just be like the best looking Phantom Thieves you've ever had.
He would definitely have a bow tie in his,
of course,
like in his ensemble.
Yep.
And gosh, what else would?
He's also a Ravenclaw type, so he would be more magic oriented. But I feel like he would be a battle mage.
Kind of, yeah. Like
and
definitely,
he would
like
want to get in your face. So maybe he would have like hand claws. Like there's different types of like medieval weapons that you would hand wield that have like there's like fancy brass knuckles.
I kind of see him as having like
claws on him,
dual wielding like morning stars. I don't know why, but like having like he's spinning him around, and then he goes,
okay, we'll go there.
Blah 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 blah. It's big old. He's kind of like he's got almost like a skull like attitude though, like Ryuji, the character of Ryuji skull, where he's just like rah, in your face. So with a bit of a temper, a little hot temper. So I could see him totally just getting in there and being like blah 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 blah. So what does his mask look like? And that will give us an indication as to what his code name should be, I would say.
What his mask look like? What would Ryan's mask be? I want to say it'd be just like Joker's because I don't have an imagination. But I almost classic think, masquerade.
Here, I got you. He's got like his in the same way his mask is shaped like a bow tie, and since the bow ties have
sounds ridiculous,
kind of, but like you could with the right artist you could stylize it up. But here's where, because his mask looks like a bow ties have a distinct shape, which leads me to what I think is the coolest sounding Phantom Thief code name. His name would be Hourglass.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah. I'm into it. There. So we got Hourglass, we've got Raven, we've got Penguin, and we've got Termite. My fifth pick, our fifth Phantom Thief, would be our friend A-Ray, because of course, because he's just a BA. He's a stage combat guy, but he also does motion capture. He's a professional in the industry. It was one of, I think, my more proud gets in regards to our interviews that we've done.
Yeah.
So A-Ray is like a berserker type, though. I mean, the dude's got a big old bushy red beard, so his persona would totally be like an aggressive, like barbarian, like Assassin's Creed Valhalla type character. I'm thinking kind of like what's her name, Makoto. He's got the fists. He's like just a brawler. So he's got
I don't have her unlocked yet, so I don't know.
Yeah, well, okay. Spoilers, I guess. There's a character with like punch.
I know she's in the team. Like I just don't have her yet.
Yeah, so he's got like brass knuckles, and I'm trying to think of what his code name would be though. So
something Nordic, big red beard.
Yeah,
Thor, like straight up Odin.
I like that. Odin. We'll go with Odin.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah,
like big beard, big dude, big brawler.
Yeah, he's got an eye patch too. Definitely got an eye patch as part of his look, as part of his mask or whatever. So awesome. All right, cool. Well, there's our Phantom Thieves, and that's DLC. So if you've been a guest on our show,
we also had T-Bone and Matt Calhoun on our show.
Yeah, we've had a lot. We've had a lot of good guests. So if you are a guest on our show and are listening and want to also be done the honor of being part of our Phantom Thieves team, then please reach out to us. We will accept you as part of our gang and want to hear what your ideas, your persona would look like. And if you have other thoughts as to other members, if you're a listener and want to be part of our Phantom Thieves gang, then by all means, we want to hear your ideas to what your persona would look like. If you have other ideas as to Penguin and Termite or any other of the ones we talked about tonight, we want to hear those thoughts and more. So Termite will tell you where you can reach out to give your feedback.
All of our feedback entities can be found at 80bitpodsmash.com. That's our landing website where there are links to all of our social media outlets. There is a Discord server that we have stood up, and we interact with our community there, and the link to that server is in all of our show notes as well as on our website. And you can find us at Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Reddit. And then if you're interested in our podcast and you come by way from one platform and you'd like us to be on another, we are on all the platforms, and our RSS feed is available for you to put on any app you would like. And all of that stuff can be found at 80bitpodsmash.com. So make sure you hit us up and like and subscribe to us so that we can get bubbled up in the algorithms and discovered, and we can grow our community and make our awesome little space in the gaming industry and the gaming community world a fun place to hang out.
Also, if you are someone who draws, if you are that kind of artist and have time on your hands and need some inspiration, then I would love to see your interpretation of these personas that we just talked about, or these Phantom Thieves. That would be freaking sweet. You send that to us, you draw yourself into there as well, because you're definitely part of the gang at that point, and that's what we will post it all over the internet. It will be our new thing. Everywhere. Yep. So awesome. All right, cool. Well, DLC is one of our favorite things, but we have a quick 5 minutes. We got to be fast, but we've got a time for
doing this podcast is our favorite thing.
Doing this podcast is our favorite thing.
Favorite things. Something sweet that we're digging this week that happened, or that we've done, or that we got, or something we experienced that we're digging and that we can share with you guys, in the hopes that maybe you are inspired to do something as well, to share your favorite thing with us. Should you go first?
I can go. Yeah. So my favorite thing has to do with my 2-year-old son. He is suddenly becoming, I think he's going through a leap. He's going through a bit of a mental leap and starting to figure things out. One of the things he's discovered, though, is how do I put this? He's discovered where his pee comes from.
Yes.
Because he's been wearing a diaper for, his whole life pretty much, and he knows that he gets wet and uncomfortable down there, but he doesn't know how that happens or why or what to do with it, because he's 2. But we're getting to the age where potty training is going to begin to become a reality, and we think we're off to a pretty good start, because what he's learned he loves to do is he loves to go, I go pee-pee in bathtub, and he wants to stand in the bathtub, and he just cracks up while he watches himself pee, and you can see him tense up trying to make more pee happen, and he goes, it's so funny, and it's the funniest thing. And so tonight, for example, I went to go put him down for a bath, and he totally I went to go, he was crying and fussy, so we were maybe we'll let him air out a bit, because kids sometimes get rashes down there, and sometimes let him air out, and then I'll give him a bath. Before I could give him a bath, I totally saw him standing in the threshold of the door, and he had peed onto the floor, and he was like starting to pee on the carpet, and he's like, Dad, I want to pee in bathtub. I'm like, I have to clean up your pee mess, but I also think this is the funniest thing that I've seen you do all day. So it brought a smile to my face. It's totally not something that you can repeat unless you have a kid, but if you do end up having kids, don't get upset if your kid pees on the floor. It's a magical time when they're discovering how their body works. And oftentimes, if you just take a step back from like, oh, you're ruining my floor, because they're not. It's mostly water anyways. And if you take a step back and realize the enjoyable comedy of the situation, it's a delightful thing. So
you are a better man than me, because I would just be like stressed out about cleaning, and I would not even be able to acknowledge that something comical was happening. I'd be like, so no, get on the floor. And I'd be like racing to grab the child and throw them into the tub, of course, safely, but like, sure. Pee in here. And then I would just go, you stay there, I'm going to go clean. And like, I would have completely wrecked all of the comedy. I wouldn't have even acknowledged it. So there's a little insight into Termite's fatherhood.
A little bit of our differences in for parenting styles. So.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
And then I'd be like, don't ever pee except for in a diaper.
Never pee. Right. Never pee or again.
In a bathtub. Yeah. We're nipping this in the bud. This is not going to be a thing. You are not running around this house and peeing.
Oh my gosh, it's mostly water. Calm down. It's fine. It's not worth ruining. It's not worth ruining a kid's emotional life over.
I know.
You think you have enough pee in your life? I've got 2 dogs. Like, get over yourself.
I have 2 cats.
I suppose that's
2 kids.
True. Yes, I suppose cats also pee.
Yeah. And one cat who doesn't know how to stay in their litter box.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah. Oh, poor Butters.
Yeah.
We both have it rough. Yeah, we both deal with a lot of pee. Never mind. I take it back. All right, what's your favorite thing?
My favorite thing is a few weeks ago, a coworker of mine, he's also like, he likes us on social media and stuff. His name is Dan. Hey, how about that? So many Dans.
Hey.
Had like mentioned to me that he had his PlayStation 3 in the garage, and I'm never going to say no to anything to add to my collection or to anything. Like, even if it's a duplicate, I have 2 PS3s. I don't need another PlayStation 3, but I don't have a launch model PS3. So like he said, it might be a launch model. It's the fat one. And I was like, I don't have one of those. That'd be awesome. He said, well, it's sitting in my garage. It doesn't work. I'll bring it to you. Like a month went by. I completely forgot. Well, on Friday, I was working and he had to come in to do some things. And so he brings the PlayStation 3. He hands it to me. It's gorgeous. It is a launch model PlayStation 3, but I looked at the model number, and sure enough, it is a CECH A01, and that is the launch model. It has 4 USB ports, a 60GB hard drive, and it has the actual PlayStation 2 hardware in it for backwards compatibility with PlayStation 2 games. And I was thrilled. I'm over the moon excited to have this as a part of my collection now. And he said, well, I have a controller in my car that goes with it. And I just kind of like, I'm not really worried about it. Controllers, I got 3 PlayStation 3 controllers. So a 4th one would be kind of cool for 4-player co-op maybe one day. So I was, that's fine. But I was just so excited and enthralled with the fact that this thing is like, it looks gorgeous.
Yeah.
It's in great condition. Yeah, it's mine. It doesn't work, but I can get it fixed. And here it is. Like, I've got the bones to something. And it had the warranty sticker intact, which means no one had gone in there and messed around with it. It was fresh, even though it didn't work. So then we go out to my car. I'm like leaving. So I'm putting stuff in. He's like, well, let me get that controller before I leave. And he goes and he grabs the controller and hands it to me. And so you might think that the DualShock 3 is the ubiquitous controller for PlayStation 3. And it kind of is. But the DualShock 3 came out later in the console's life cycle when they added rumble features to the controller. The PlayStation 3 did not come with a DualShock 3 at launch. It came with a different type of controller called the 6-axis. And it did not have a rumble engine in it. And it's called 6-axis because of the gyro engine. It was different from Xbox 360 because it had motion controls in it, built in. And I have one of those now.
Nice.
It is ridiculously light, and it feels like I'm going to break it when I play it. Like, I have it in my hand right now. And on the top of the controller, where it usually says DualShock 3, it says 6-axis. And so it actually does stand out in a collection. You can see it. I'm just so, that's my favorite thing. Like, these things go for crazy amounts of money on eBay. He could have sold it. He could have made money, but he knows that I'm a collector and I'm building a collection. And so he's like, you can have it. I don't want to deal with it. So here you go. And everybody wins. So I've now taken this console to, if you go on Facebook, you can type in Fredericksburg Console Mods. His name is Chris. I've taken it to him. I've offloaded it and he's going to do a bunch of work for me. He's going to reflow it. He's going to replace the capacitors, and he's going to completely deep clean the fans and replace the thermal paste. So hopefully with all of that work being done to it, it will revive the console and it will work for a while. And I will have in my possession a launch PS3 that works. with PS2 backwards compatibility. So I can cover 3 generations of PlayStation with one console, and I'm very excited. That's
cool.
my favorite thing.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that awkwardly leads us into our main topic, because normally we would be doing DLC here, and we'd do a meh. We could do a meh if you want.
It's fine.
Meh. I felt like I needed to do it. Suddenly I was like, wow, no, I don't want to do it. Now you told me, now you told me I can't do it, so I'm going to do it.
I didn't say no.
Well, I took it as no. I interpreted it as no.
Don't be dumb, young man.
I am dumb. There's nothing you can do about that. All right. So our episode tonight, our main topic, we are talking, as we mentioned on the front of the show, we are talking about what is better, new IPs or new entries in existing franchises. So again, by IP, we mean intellectual property. The way we use it here on the podcast is it is a new game. It doesn't have any existing entries. Every single game that has ever come out at one point or another was a new IP. But once you start getting sequels and reboots, it becomes a franchise. So examples of franchises are as many as there are grains of sand. There's Mario, Call of Duty. Yeah, every single game. Well, technically every single game that exists is a franchise to some degree or another, because it has the potential for a sequel, even if it is just a one-off game. But, again, by its very existence, it becomes an existing franchise, even if it's not then franchised, if that makes sense. Yep. Whereas new IPs are brand new games. So they don't exist yet, but that's the point, is when they come out, they are new. They are brand new. And examples of this in the recent history were Horizon Zero Dawn, Ghost of Tsushima. There's a ton of new IPs. And like I said, every time a new game is created, it's a new IP. Yep. So the question that stand before us, so we'll start on, is basically which should developers prioritize? And then, by extension of that, what are the pros and cons of new IPs versus what are the pros and cons of existing franchises? So this first question is really going to be the meat of our show. But yeah, let's jump right into it. So
sure. At first, I wanted to split this up and be like, let's think about this from like the developer or even the publisher perspective, and then let's split that away from the player perspective. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, if you do that and we go down that path, we ended up saying the same things.
Yep.
It just has a different perspective. So Instead of splitting it, we'll just go down each side and think about like as the player and then as a developer or a publisher. Mm-hmm. And the reason why we talk about this is because the video game industry is a business. It exists to make money. Mm-hmm. If it doesn't make money, it doesn't exist.
Right. If it doesn't make money, we don't get new games. Exactly. Right. That's how it is in this country. And another alternate universe out there where we're not like
in the world, not
late
just
stage.
Country.
Yeah, exactly. In another parallel universe out there where they have globalized and figured out the whole resource thing, then people make games for fun, what do you call it? Self-actualization. That's what I'm looking for. Yes. People make and play games for self-actualization, and therefore maybe that's better, maybe that's worse. I don't know. But in this world, we have to eat, so the people who make games need to make money, and the organizations and entities that make games need to put food on the plates of their employees, or golden plates on the outside of their massive jets. And in some cases, they need to do that to survive, I guess.
Right, they have to.
So yes, you're right. One way or another, for good or ill, yes, they have to make money.
So yeah, the meat and the potato of this question really is like businessy discussions and economical discussions.
It's two-sided. It's actually two-sided, because on the one hand, video games are a business. On the other hand, video games are an entertainment medium, which makes them an art form by their very nature. So it is a twofold question. It once again, like many of our discussions on this podcast, does often come down to an issue of which has more artistic merit versus which makes more money. Mm-hmm. And we can tackle it that way. And all of that should be wrapped up in one way or another by discussing and breaking down the pros and cons of each.
Yeah. So pros and cons of new IPs. Now we've laid that foundation from the obvious point of view here is, as a publisher and you want to fund a developer to make a thing, you want the smallest amount of risk and you want the biggest amount of opportunity, and so you're going to go with existing franchises that have done well in the past.
Typically,
they've proven their worth. You can map out an entire business marketing plan, like Halo, for example. Like Halo 2, like we're doing that because Halo 1 destroyed everything. Like it was so good, it was so well received, and it sold so well. We're going to go make Halo 2 because we're going to build on that existing foundation and that market base, and we're going to market to them, and we know who's buying it. We know you have all the things known. You can check all the boxes. We know exactly who to market this to. We know how to price it. We know the scope and the budget that we can use to develop this game. and we can have realistic expectations with how to build and iterate over it. And you kind of just know more. If you have a brand new IP and you're like, oh, we're going to go make God of War 1. Like, oh, this is like, we're going to go tap into like some mythology things. So when you go make a new IP, you don't know how it's going to be received. It takes 5 to 6 years to develop a new game and release it. So you have 5 to 6 years of other companies, your competition, that might beat you to the market with the exact same similar IP. There's way more risk. You don't know how much it's going to cost. You don't know what the scope of the budget's going to be, and you can't market it other than looking at similar things. You don't have a concrete thing to attach your new IP to as far as market research to see how economically viable it'll be. And so you get that risk. Now, shifting focus to the player, if you walk into a GameStop and you've heard murmurings of Biomutant, and you're like, ooh, Biomutant sounds cool, but then there's Horizon Forbidden West. And you look at the two and you're like, as a player, you end up making the same decision. Well, I've played Horizon Zero Dawn, and it's amazing and incredible. It's open world. I know exactly what to expect. I know what gameplay engine is going to be there. I know how it's going to play. I know RPG mechanics, open world exploration. I know it's going to have collectibles, and I know it's going to have complicated combat. Awesome. What's Biomutant add? Well, I saw this video and this teaser trailer, and maybe it has the similar flavor of things, but I don't really know. So I'm just going to get Forbidden West because I know it. And so that's kind of the decision with Risk as players, as an investment of money and time to consume this art form. So we have the exact same procedure. It just comes from a different perspective when it comes to looking at new IPs versus existing franchises. So what do you think?
Well, yeah, it's interesting. It sounds like you are tending towards being a fan of existing franchises, and for good reason, because, you know.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know where I fall, actually.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Your arguments seem to have been in favor of existing franchises.
Probably because I am very, very, very aware of business decisions. Yeah. And that's like, I'm just kind of, I wouldn't say an apologist for it, but I get it. And I understand the nature of capitalism. And so like, I'm going to lean on, it makes sense to me why a business would do an existing franchise.
Sure, of course.
So go ahead. Yeah.
No, yeah. Well, but what I'm saying is that it's funny because I tend to lean more towards the understanding of the artistic side of things, being a theater major. So we balance each other out pretty well here. Yep. From my perspective, you know, the biggest advantage of new IPs is it's new, it's fresh, it's something different. It is by its very nature going to include a certain amount of creative effort that a existing franchise by its nature doesn't. You know, when you say we're going to make a new Mario game, you know what it's going to have. You don't have to start from scratch with character design. You don't have to start from scratch, whereas you do with an IP. But the benefit of that is it adds more to the table artistically. It adds more to the table creatively. Forces creators to actually, you know, try something new, try several things new.
Can I interrupt your thought now with a quote from Rare about exactly what you're saying?
Yeah, sure.
It's really, really cool. I think it's perfect time. But hold your thought because I don't want to override what you're saying.
Of course, yeah.
I just want to like pause you and then write this in. So back in 2019 in November, there was an interview with Eurogamer with Craig Duncan, who is the studio head of Rareware, and he was asked the question of like, why would you not make existing franchises? Why do you continuously make new IP? And he said, if that was our logic about making existing franchises, we would have been making Jetpack, which is like their first game, for the last 35 years. The great thing about making games is putting a set of passionate people together, making something they truly love and believe in. That's the goal of making anything. That's why Sea of Thieves is the game that it is. That's why Everwild will be the game that it will be, because we have a team of people who are truly passionate about the thing they're creating. Then my job as a studio head is to create an environment where they can go do that and they can do their best work and we can create something amazing. It's not about me picking the game that I want made or I want people to go do. It's about the team building the thing that is in their burning desire and heart to go make the most amazing experience.
Yeah, and I mean, we talk about, you know, I brought up Hollywood at the beginning, and Hollywood is, people smarter than me have been talking about this for a long time, how there's almost a crisis, that we've reached a problem with Hollywood where everything that's being made is reboots, remakes, and sequels, and how there's not even the MCU, as successful as it is, it's all based off of comics that have come before it.
Yep,
they're not doing anything new, and they talk about how that is it's creating a creatively bankrupt society. If all we're doing is rehashing the same old stories. And part of it is because, again, like you're talking about, I mean, it's a business thing. Hollywood has become so much of a massive industry that you're right, that risk aversion is so high. But the problem is, like, everything was a new IP at one point, like everything was a new thing at some point, and a lot of the great movies from history and from the past are, like, were things that were brand new at the time. Like, think of all the movies that came out in the 80s that we're now rebooting. Those were all like completely original ideas back in the 80s. And, you may say, well, if it works, it works. But the reality is, like, Hollywood is dying. They're losing so much money. They're constantly losing money. The pandemic didn't help at all, of course. And what you're seeing is that streaming services are making raking in cash. And look at what's happening with streaming services. They are constantly pushing out new IPs, brand new shows, entirely new concepts. They are they're doing reboots and stuff like that as well, but like they're also still making an effort to create brand new IPs. So there is still wisdom in pursuing and making space for new IPs from both a creative and a business decision. Because think about it. Every new IP you come up with could be a brand new franchise.
Right.
And look at you may think, oh, has video games reached the same creatively bankrupt point? And I'd say probably not, because look at the last few years, we've gotten I can think of the last, like, since 2017, I can think of 2 games that have become mammoth hits and new franchises on their own that we still currently only have 1 entry on. And that's Horizon Zero Dawn and Ghost of Tsushima. Those games got massive critical acclaim and are now getting huge, big budget sequels because of how successful they were. And they were brand new, untested IPs from relatively untested developers. I mean, Guerrilla Games did Killzone, which was fine, but, like, okay, you're going to take Killzone, you're going to make this massive speculative sci-fi fantasy open world game. That's pretty risky. And then Ghost of Tsushima, like, they had made, Sucker Punch had made Infamous and Sly Cooper, and so they had a fairly dearth, but they also didn't really have many games, as we covered in our dev profile up to this point. And you're saying we're going to make this massive, like, cinematic and also hugely open world game. Also, we're going to tack on a crazy multiplayer system later, and, like, that's super untested for a developer like that, and it's a smash, out of the box success. So yeah, I do think there's still a lot of value, both from a business standpoint and a creative standpoint, in investing in new IPs.
You just kicked down the door on something I didn't anticipate talking about tonight, but this is, like, we have to talk about it now.
Sure.
Talk about, like, the risk aversion and new IPs, and how when you are a publisher and a new development or a development studio comes to you as a publisher and says, hey, we want to make this new game. Can you fund it? And the publisher has to look and say, okay, I'm going to give you guys a huge chunk of cash and hope that you can give me that back and more. What mitigates that risk the biggest is and you said Netflix and how streaming services. Now we have Microsoft's Game Pass, and we have PlayStation dabbling with PlayStation Plus. And in 2020, we had games like Among Us and Fall Guys, and The Medium in 2021 was an Xbox new IP. Outriders is coming out. It's going to be on Game Pass day 1. We see now a lot of indie titles being added to these services. And so, like, PlayStation just did their Play at Home for March, where they gave us 9 new games. Some were old, but they're all different IPs. They're not existing franchises, but they're kind of independent studios. We're starting to see now, like, a shift in the industry towards this Netflix-style streaming service library dump. But the reason being is because if a studio wants to make a game or a movie for Netflix, a movie for Netflix, Netflix can eat the cost because their platform is so big that they can afford to, like, take a risk on a new show, because if that show tanks, they still have the rest of their platform and all the stuff that doesn't tank to kind of make that up. And so the risk is significantly reduced, and it allows them to make that call to do a new IP. And so we're going to see the same thing with Game Pass. And I think we're seeing that, and we're going to continue seeing that play out, especially with whatever Bethesda comes up with next. That's not in the Elder Scrolls world. That's past whatever Elder Scrolls 6 is, past Starfield, whatever the next thing is. Like, now think about the cash flow that Bethesda has, that they can come up with any IP they want, and the risk is gone because Microsoft is paying them to be on Game Pass. Like, they bought them, so they're going to get their money. And Microsoft doesn't take the risk because they have 20 other titles from Bethesda that's on Game Pass right now. And so the money is there. and it allows a lot more freedom of expression and a lot more creativity. And I think that's the exact focal point that Phil Spencer is looking for as head of Xbox that he was trying to drive with Game Pass. That's the developer-friendly thing. And then with PlayStation, on the Mark Cerny talk that he gave at GDC about how easy it's going to be to develop games for PlayStation 5, and then we see Jim Ryan, the CEO of PlayStation, doing all this cool stuff with PlayStation Plus and like the free titles, the collection that comes with PlayStation 5, and the Play at Home initiative where we're giving games. Like, look at how Rocket League and how Fall Guys benefited from being free on PlayStation Plus. And now we see Destruction All-Stars, the same thing, which kind of flopped. Like, it's not that great of a game, but it had a great base because it was free and they were able to like expand that. So all of that to say is like these new IPs, we might see a lack of them now in the AAA space when, as far as it's like, here's the $60 title that you're going to buy. But I think there's a huge viability in this whole platform market. I don't even know what you call it. Like, what is Game Pass and what is PlayStation Plus? What is the abstract name for both of them?
Subscription services.
Yeah,
that's what exactly they are. They're subscription services, just like Netflix and
that's
Hulu.
A game changer in this generation, and we're going to see it happen. Like in this generation, I guess it's generation 9 is what we're in right now with consoles, and so like it's going to be the thing we talk about. Like, what happened in generation 9 that defines gaming? It's going to be subscription services and ridiculous amounts of new IP. Mm-hmm. Just look at those.
Hopefully, I mean, if you think about like
new game.
Yeah, anyway, there were a couple of periods. It seems like we go through these periods where we have this like flowering of new IPs, and then like they kind of rely on their franchises for a while, and then flowering new IPs, and like the other periods of time when it happened, it was like there was a big boom in new IPs in the mid 2000s. Tons of new IP. We got so many franchises from that. We got BioShock. We got Far Cry. We got all these crazy new IPs that weren't just like rehab. I mean, I guess BioShock technically was a spiritual successor to System Shock, but it was still an entirely new IP at the time. So like we got all these games just blossoming in the 2000s. And when you think about it, like the whole development style was different back then, though. It was like if a new IP flopped, whatever, like we've already moved on to the next project. We're going to pump it out in a couple of years. You know what I mean? Like the costs were lower, the complexity was lower, so they're able to churn out games, and that's why we're able to see it. But styles have changed in types of games that are coming out, and then not to mention the complexity and requirements now to make games as beautiful and as great and as fleshed out as they are. The development time has gone up. And so again, like you're saying, that risk, it's like, okay, we're dumping money for 5 years into this development cycle. Like we need to have some assurance that we'll get a return. But now we're back on the other side of it we do have some assurance that we'll get some investment on our return because we got it on a subscription service. So we're getting money from that anyways. So that's an interesting point.
I'm going to, just to clarify, just to flesh this thought out, I'm going to give you the list of games that don't have release dates yet that are new IPs coming that we care about. I think it's we. I'm going to say we.
Sure. Yeah,
I made a list for me, but I think you care about them too. Babylon's Fall from Square Enix.
Oh my gosh, I forgot about that. What?
Yeah. Elden Ring, which I know you love. Ghostwire Tokyo.
Yes, I'm so stoked.
Gotham Knights. I mean, I don't know if you want to call that a new franchise or not, or a new IP because it's Batman. But the idea, the characters, and the co-op, it's new. It's like it's not a sequel. Hogwarts Legacy. Project Athia, which we now know as what is it called? Forspoken, Stray, which is the cat game, like indie cat games. Like that's a list of games that don't even have release dates yet because they're so far out. And then just like going back to what has already come out or what's going to, The Medium, we have It Takes Two, Outriders, we have Returnal. Yep. We said that at the same time. Deathloop, Biomutant, Back 4 Blood.
Yeah,
which is kind of and Kena, Bridge of Spirits. So like that's just stuff we care about, and the list goes on. If you go deeper, like, and that's all new IP from last year and this year. It's
and that's
happening.
like AAA space too. The indie space is blown up with new IPs constantly. So yeah,
it's happening, man. There's a lot of stuff going on in the games industry right now.
Yeah, it's easy to like get bogged down by all of the we're a God of War 5,
six.
Technically 6. Is this 5?
There's
or 6?
a lot more than that.
There's
more,
like 2
PSP games. There's like
So we're on like we're and those are games that we're excited about. Final Fantasy 7 Intergrade, Final Fantasy 7 Remake Intergrade is like 4 different levels of sequel or reboot deep. You know what I mean? Like it's just like So it can sometimes get overwhelming. Even just listening to I imagine even just being a listener to our podcast and hearing us talk sometimes about so many games that are just like 20 entries deep. And it can get kind of like you begin to think in your mind, like, is there any creativity left in this industry if all they're doing is rehashing the same old IPs? But part of what I wanted to talk about this in this episode is because it's nice to kind of take a step back and be like, actually, we're having a pretty great renaissance right now of new IPs. It's just hard to see the forest for the trees sometimes.
Yep.
Sorry, I'm just going to throw a name out there because it just popped into my head. Death Stranding. Death Stranding is a huge, amazing, incredible game by Hideo Kojima, and it was a new IP that only exists because his project towards a new entry in an existing franchise, Silent Hills, fell apart. So like that fell apart, and what we got out of it was this brand new IP, which is awesome.
I'm terrified to play that game again because we played it the first time before the pandemic.
I know.
And the whole game is all about connections and like isolation, and wow. Like I would probably be in tears the whole time. Mm-hmm. But anyway, I digress.
Yeah. So I did want to take some time to kind of blow this out because it does get more complicated than what we've talked about so far, because there are examples of time. We talked about a lot of examples of times when it worked out, but sometimes pivoting to a new IP is a bad idea. And I think I unfortunately I don't think we have time to really dig into this. So I'm going to just briefly talk about how a couple times there are a few examples that came to mind when thinking about this topic of times when a developer probably should have stuck to their existing franchises. And the one that comes closest to mind, though, is BioWare. Anthem. I know we talk about this and hit on this a lot and pick on Anthem a lot, but Anthem is a great example of a time where it's like, they were trying something new, and I applaud them for it. In fact, I like Anthem for what it's worth. But the reality is, BioWare was like, when you look at what the difficulty and fraught development of Anthem, it is exactly a new IP problem. It is 100% like they had a nebulous idea as to what they wanted this game to be, and that idea did not solidify until the 11th hour. And that's that can be a problem with new IPs is, starting this new idea. If you have like a strong idea from the start, then go with God, make the game. But if there's not a good plan from the get-go, and if you're just kind of pulling stuff out of your butts throughout the entire development cycle, it's probably not going to be a good game. When you have a development studio with as storied a legacy as BioWare, it's like, was it really a good idea to task them with coming up with this new game from EA's perspective? Or what would it have been better for them to have been working on Dragon Age 4?
Yeah, especially hot on the heels of the flop of what Mass Effect Andromeda was,
and
which is interesting.
BioWare is such a great example of that, too, because they're on the other side, too. It's Mass Effect Andromeda is an example of how sometimes sometimes you should pivot to an IP because your existing franchises are either becoming stale, or the one that you're talking about risk and how new existing franchises can be kind of risk averse. There is one major risk with existing franchises, with just doing a new entry in an existing franchise, and that is you always run the risk of ruining the franchise. Like you always run the risk of each new entry. We talk a lot about the franchises we love on this podcast: Mario, Zelda, Halo, God of War, but all it takes is one major flop and it can sour the taste of that entire franchise. And even in those franchises that we just talked about, there are some bad apples. Like I'm not a huge fan of Skyward Sword.
You will be,
hopefully more. But you know what I mean? Like there are Zelda games I don't love. There are Mario games I don't love, and it can definitely hurt the bottom line.
No, I think a perfect example of what you're saying is Star Fox. So Nintendo specifically, having so many very famous franchises that are all represented in Smash Bros, they have a very, very strict, we have to iterate or innovate with every entry. We cannot have two games in the franchise that are so close together. And I think it's a newer thing because like the original Marios, like the first 4 Marios were all the same until Mario 64.
Yeah.
But so like Skyward Sword was an example of them doing that. It was like, we have to innovate. We have to. And then Breath of the Wild was the continuation of that, the actual like fully realized version. And that was a good thing. But where it went sour was Star Fox. Star Fox Zero for the Wii U is trash because they had to try to do this innovation thing, and it was forced on everyone to do like the motion of the gamepad with the double screens with TV, look down on the gamepad perspectives. And it was clunky. And I enjoyed it because I can give Nintendo a lot of passes probably because of my rose-colored glasses. I enjoyed Star Fox Zero, but the objective reception on the internet was that it was too much motion controls, it was clunky, and it did not make sense, and it was very bad design decisions. And it was because they forced themselves to iterate. They did not want to just make another Star Fox 64, even though everyone wanted another Star Fox 64. And so that's kind of where you can fall short when you do another example of releasing an existing franchise and you don't know what you're doing or what you have. And that's a perfect thing for this conversation.
Yeah, totally. Cool. Let's end with the last question here because I think it's a good one and should facilitate some good discussion as we wrap up. And that is, which do you want to see more of in the future? Which would get you more excited? Because I know both of us get excited for both.
Yeah.
So if we can break it down, and maybe we can recouch this question as like, what gets you excited for existing franchises and what gets you excited for new IPs? How do those differ?
I guess like I've been a gamer for 30 years, and so I have seen so much. And I look at the big three, Microsoft, Nintendo, and Sony, and every single time, I don't know if I'm doing this correctly or not, but if I see a new IP from Sony, Ghost of Tsushima, Death Stranding, I'm excited. I'm in. Returnal. Like, Returnal, there's nothing about Returnal's gameplay list of style of what it is that intrigues me, but it's a new IP from Sony, so I'm interested. But then Nintendo, I want existing franchises. Bring F-Zero back. Bring Star Fox back. I want that. Do a new Zelda. I'm in. What's the next Mario Odyssey sequel look like? If Nintendo comes out with a new IP, I'm like, Splatoon was amazing. It was absolutely incredible. I'm not excited about Splatoon 3 at all. I don't know why. I just don't need that. I want,
right.
If Nintendo's going to do something new, it's very skeptical, and it's very rare that it ever happens. I think Pikmin was something that I'm not super into.
ARMS was something that was, yeah.
And that
was
was fun
new.
for its time
fun, right.
on a new console where there wasn't a whole lot to play, but it has no arms.
Right.
Puns intended.
Yes.
So like Nintendo, I want existing franchises. Sony, I'm excited about new franchises. Microsoft is kind of a mix of both. I love what they've done in the past, and I feel so neglected that there hasn't been a good entry in like Fable or Halo in so long. Gears, of course, is churning out almost yearly, like Gears 5. I can't wait to play and get into, but I'm not as excited about Gears 5 as I would be the next Fable, because Fable's been so long and far spaced out. And so I want to see more existing franchise. I want to see Microsoft go back to what they were from Microsoft or from Xbox One, the original one, and bring those franchises back. And it sounds like they're starting to kind of work on that. And so anyway, that to say, when I see a new IP coming from Xbox, I'm like, eh. So it's weird that I have this kind of like mapped out preconceived notion. It's a bias. Like, it totally is like a prejudice. It's like, oh, new IP Sony, awesome. New IP Nintendo, meh. New IP Microsoft, doubt it. But then you like existing franchise,
right? But it's based
Sony,
off of your experience, because you've been, quote, does this, you've been both pleased on one hand and then burned on the other hand.
Yeah.
Being excited for one over the other. Yeah, I think it, in general, to break out of that conversation of like the big three and which ones you're more prejudiced towards, I think in general, just talking about like new IPs, I get excited with with every new IP brings so much opportunity and possibility. Though that's not to say that I'm like always sold, right? Like right out of the gate, and that is because like if a game, the opportunity of new IPs is we can do something new, we can do something different, we can really flex our creative juices. So when you then just go and try to rip off something else, it can kind of put a sour taste in my mouth.
Mm-hmm. Battleborn is a great example of that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Battleborn, and I mean, there's so many examples to list. There's a brand new game, indie game coming out called Themiskira that is unfortunately PC only. But it's a Souls-like game, and it looks very much like Bloodborne and like a mix between Bloodborne and Dark Souls, which, again, there's part of me that's like, ooh, cool, that could be good. Unfortunately, it's PC only, so if it comes to consoles, I'll get my hands on it, but otherwise, probably not. But nevertheless, on the other hand, I'm also like, but like, why not try something different? Like, there's so many opportunities. Like, I've yet to see like a proper Souls-like pirate game, like taking that genre of game and blending it with that genre of storytelling. And I'm dying for something like that. So why are you rehashing the same old kind of world? I don't know. It could probably be good. I may end up playing it later and being like, Themiskira was amazing. But you know what I mean? Like, there's that idea of like, why, you have, and I think of Babylon's Fall as another great example, because you just reminded me of it. And I'm like, okay, how many like high fantasy medieval castles and knight games have we had before? Like, what are you going to do that's new and different? Which is, circling back around, why I'm so excited about Biomutant, because it looks so creative. It looks so clever. It looks like they're trying new things, and they're not burning out their developers to do it. You know what I mean? Like, they're not crunching their developers to get it made. So much of Biomutant has me excited. I want that game to succeed so bad, because it looks like they're really trying to be creative with the game. And it looks like and they dropped a new combat trailer recently that just looks like a hoot and a hollering good time. There's so many different ways that you can like customize combat in that game, and that sounds great. So yeah, that's what gets me excited about new IPs. But if I go on the other side of existing franchises, like, everyone wants to experience again the good things they've experienced before. Like, you know what I mean? And so there's that comfort of existing IPs where you're like, I'm not taking a risk as a consumer. as to like, because every new IP, you're like, you buy it and you're like, no matter what other faith you had in it, I had a pretty good idea that I would like Ghost of Tsushima, but I wasn't sure. You know what I mean? When I bought that, there's always that like, whereas I'm going to be much more confident that I will like God of War 5 because I liked God of War 4 and I trust that developer as well. So there's definitely an interesting consumer developer relationship with either. You know what I mean? There's a lot of you put trust in either case, but there's a little bit less trust required when it comes to an existing franchise. And it's always nice to, again, if you're talking about like a very story heavy franchise, it's always nice to revisit those characters. It's always nice to be back in Hyrule for the first time. You know what I mean? With Zelda. So those worlds, those characters, those stories, those games are familiar, comfortable, and as long as enough innovation is happening in that space, you're still going to get plenty of creativity and cool, unique experiences and ideas, even with existing franchises, as long as those developers are competent and trying new things within those franchises. So that's kind of my answer to that question as to which one I get more excited about. So I want to continue to see both. I want to see new entries in brand new franchises that have just started, like Horizon and Ghost of Tsushima and all that stuff. Like, I want to see more of those. All those new IPs you were talking about, I want them to succeed so that we can get more. I want Biomutant 2. I want Kena Bridge of Spirits 2. You know what I mean? Like, I want those games to be good and exciting so that way we can get more out of them. So I'm hopeful in both cases. But in general, I think what's important and kind of like a thesis statement for how I feel about this topic is I just want creativity. I just want each experience.
We're getting that.
Right. Yeah. I just want each game. I get excited about games when I know that like it can bring me something new and bring me to different new places, either emotionally or just like from a sort of an intellectual standpoint, like, oh, this is really cool, interesting mechanics, or even just from a sheer like place of like, this is going to be fun. As humans, we are kind of fickle creatures when it comes to novelty and new experiences. And so like, yeah, we crave new experiences, and that's true for me. Maybe that's a weakness, but it's something that I will freely admit that like, I am happy to return to the same game over and over again in some cases, but in other cases, I want to sit down and have something new. So give me that.
Yeah, Nintendo's really, really good at comfort food. It's like the next Metroid Prime is going to be amazing. I can't wait to see it. Pokemon Snap 2 is going to be awesome. I'm dying to play it. And the next Breath of the Wild 2, of course, like we're in. Like these are all comfort things. But I'm also extremely excited about Avowed from Obsidian. Like that looks incredible. Yeah. They're gonna. It's a entirely new IP, and it's Obsidian, which they make great stuff. And I'm excited about what was Rareware's new game called? I forget. Everwild. Yeah, that looks awesome. Like I'm excited about to see what that's going to happen. And so, what do I want to see more of in the future? I think we're getting it. It's like even Cyberpunk, despite its technical faults, was great. It was a new IP from the makers of Witcher 3, which was also new to me. I mean, it was the third entry in a franchise, but the fact that they did something in the Cyberpunk world that has never been done before was fantastic. I got to experience the story. I loved the story. I loved the core of what that game was. It has good bones. It was just technically executed very poorly, and they're eating that right now. I am excited about the different types of games we're getting. Like Babylon's Fall looks very different from Elden's Ring and Ghostwire. And Stray, as I mentioned, and they're all like hitting different stuff, different strides. And right now we're kind of in a lull we're in the middle of a new generation transition. And so we're seeing a lot of PlayStation 5 enhanced or Xbox Series enhanced versions of existing franchises and games. And so we're kind of and the pandemic happened. So we're going to see like 2021 is just going to be a whole bunch of delays and like go back and fix your backlog time. But I think 2022 and beyond is going to be incredible. We're going to see the comfort food of Ratchet and Clank and Horizon married with the new experiences that we're going to get from the Xbox camp. And I think just gaming in general is hitting its stride with the subscription services and getting away from microtransactions and DLC models. We're shifting away from those things. And I'm very excited. I'm just like, I don't think we're stuck in a lull. Like I can see the Hollywood problem. I can definitely see the remakes of remakes. And I can see that happening in the Hollywood space. But in the gaming industry, I think we're flourishing. I think we're on the cusp of another amazing year of gaming. And I think what was the last amazing year was like 2001 or 2002 was like absolutely incredible. I think we're about to hit another golden phase of gaming because of this excitement of all the new stuff that's coming. I can't wait.
Yeah, nice. Awesome. Well, that is where we will end for the day with those thoughts. And we want to hear what Pod Smashers and other listeners think. We want to hear whether you think new IPs, you tend to gravitate towards new IPs, or do you tend to gravitate towards your comfort foods, your existing franchises? which do you think the pros and cons of each are? Was there anything that we kind of missed or what didn't have time to cover? And we want to hear those thoughts and more. Termite will remind you once again where you can share those thoughts.
You can find us at 80bitpodsmash.com, 80bitpodsmash.com. That's our landing site with links to all of our podcast platforms, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, or you can find our social media outlets, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Reddit, and Discord. We have Discord link in all of our show notes. You can jump in our server and talk to us individually and interact with our community, but you can also find us on twitch.tv/80bitpodsmash, where we have a Monday night news show at 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Savings Time, as well as a gameplay live stream on Wednesdays at 8 p.m. So you can hit us up twice a week over at twitch.tv. All of those videos, as well as our podcast, get uploaded to our YouTube channel, and you can find a link to that also at 80bitpodsmash.com.
All right, so next week we have an undetermined episode. We need to do a little bit of brainstorming, but we hope that you will stick around and check us out then to see whatever it is that we talk about that'll be a surprise to you.
All right, see you next week.
Bye.